everybody, and happy Tuesday. A lot of powerful energies around at the moment with the harvest moon. Today is, in fact, International Peace Day, 21st of September, and tomorrow is the equinox, where we have balance of night and day, and we're heading into the autumn. So my name is Reigniting. I've done a series of Instagram Live where I interview and chat to powerful, empathic and intuitive women that I believe that through adversity they discovered who they were, what it is that they are here to do, and have embraced basically have embraced their lifestyle in doing what it is to do. And it's part of basically for me as well what it is that I do, because through my own experiences I work with people that are going through, women in particular, that have been through separation and divorce. I've been there, done that, and as a teacher I know exactly what it is like, and I have all the skills necessary and the expertise to help and support you as you're going through these challenging times. I do believe that there are times in our lives where we have a shake-up moment, and the reality is behind it all, then there is that feeling that there's something more to life than the life that you're leading, and sometimes you have to go through the adversity to rediscover who it is you are, and what it is that you're here to do. This morning I have the gorgeous Danielle secretary. Danielle also has her own challenges in life, and she's here to talk about them this morning, but also how she discovered NLP and became a master of it, and has written a book called the Blackbelt Mastermind, and what it is that we can do for ourselves, totally about self-empowerment. And she's the perfect person to be coming on this morning, and she's all the way from Italy. Buongiorno, yes?
Buongiorno, bella.
Oh, there you go, my one Italian word.
Excellent, very, very good. Yeah, I'm loving it here. I just want to stay here now.
Yeah, and is your weather, like, I presume it's nicer, like warmer? Yeah.
It's lovely. It's my family, you know, half my family is from Italy, so they're cold today, but I'm wonderful. It's about it's probably about 26, 27 degrees. So it's a little bit of a light breeze, which is beautiful, but they're complaining it's cold, but it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. Yes.
Isn't that funny? It's a bit like life. It just depends on your perspective, you know, what it is that you're used to, and how you look at it. Yeah. So listen, Danielle, thank you very much for coming on. This has been a while getting together. So we're going to, I mean, the women that I interview definitely have been through adversity and have learned from it, have grown, have discovered, and I think out of it as well, have discovered about where their heart lies and what it is that, you know, that they wanted to do in life. And you were very much of that, because you were really, really successful from a business point of view. But it was like all your ideas, your image, and everything that was with you, because it was part of you, was tied up in the business. So it was in creating it, so that when it, you know, when it hit, you know, when the worst happened, that it's like you lost your whole sense of identity, your whole sense of self. And you know what you were going through probably wouldn't be unique. There's a lot of people that are living their images through the job that they do, not necessarily who they are, but what it is that they get from it. So can you give us an inkling about, you know, because you started in business really, really young. I mean, you had that entrepreneurial spirit, which is amazing.
I did. I started in business probably about 13 years of age. I used to, do all the errands, all the babysitting for my whole estate. And then around 16, I started a little art business of my own. I was driving at 17 years of age, and I used to go around all the local towns, and I did lots of different art. I did signs, I did posters, I did lots of artwork, murals inside and outside, etc., etc. And then at 19, I left art college and opened a restaurant. So that's where my business, the more serious business started. And it went from there into 3 restaurants and a gift shop as well. So I had my mini little enterprise going.
I tell you, so there was something within you, because it isn't every 19-year-old that sees, or said, well, I'm going to go into business, that has that entrepreneurial spirit. So you were already standing out from the crowd, even at that stage. So you were. And what do you think was the driving force?
To be honest, I actually, looking back, well, I mean, there is good things, of course, out of it. I always had a sense. I was always very independent. I was I was a survivor, and I always had this kind of more creative streak rather than wanting to be kind of tied down in a 9-to-5 job. I wanted to be kind of creating, and running a restaurant is very creative. It's all about the experience that you're giving people, and I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to so even in the restaurant business, I was coaching, I was counseling, it was therapy. So, when people came in for a coffee or they came in for a pizza, there was a kind of a counseling session that went with it. But there was also an underlying current of wanting to be successful and make money, because I didn't think I was good enough. And that was and I thought that being successful in business would make people like me, love me, value me, appreciate me, think I was worthwhile. So that was that's the negative current that I can see now underneath it. That was pushing me, motivating me to do that, because I didn't feel worthwhile. So that's kind of why I think I got into business.
And I think it's definitely a problem that's endemic within, for women in particular, and that feeling of being unworthy. And I do, there's a whole ancestral thing of, generations of being told, how to behave and what it is you couldn't do. And, that there's I feel that part of the reason why that there's a lot of, imposter syndrome is because within us, we actually don't have a cellular memory of generations of women that have gone before us, that have done this before us. So in a lot of ways, we're reinventing the wheel. And because it's new and it's a new experience to us, and it's not familiar, it takes a while for you to actually grow into, belief in yourself and what it is and who you are. So when the businesses went, then, because what expands, then contracts. And it was very much of the energy that was going around, because a lot, you were not unique among the experiences of losing your business. But for you, it was what the opportunity, like that whole personal growth thing that, that you went through, that you basically hit the wall. So can you just go a little bit into, how low did you go, sort of thing?
Very low. I mean, virtually, and I talk about this a lot, obviously, but when the final day came, it was summer June 2009, and my last restaurant, I had to close the doors on it. I sat on the floor and literally cried and told the staff to take food from the fridges as payment for their last week's wages, because I couldn't pay them, etc., etc. And I went home and I pretty much decided to kill myself, because at that point I felt like and we talk about imposter syndrome, I felt like the mask had come off. And all the issues that I'd never addressed as a child came flooding to the surface because there was many. One of the reasons I had been a survivor and had been independent was I came from a very messed up childhood, and my parents had their own struggles and their own problems and their own stuff to deal with, and I grew up very, very independently. Let's put it that way, very independently. Without that, my parents loved me, but they weren't there for me as parents. They were in that regard. So all the issues that all that feeling sense of being a little girl and feeling abandoned, feeling not the number one priority, not feeling loved, not feeling good enough. When the business was gone and everything was stripped away from me, because everything was, literally everything, my house, I lost everything. I went bankrupt. I lost my home that I'd worked so hard to have for myself. I had money in the bank. Everything was taken from me, rightly so. It was money that I owed, but everything was taken. My car, I was left homeless without a penny in the bank. I had to go down and remember probably the most humiliating day of my life, which, by the way, isn't humiliating now when I think back on it. But, at the time, when you're living, when you're leading a certain life, it's all about this, about the front. Yeah. And I remember having to go down, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help, but I remember having to go down and ask my local, the social worker guy, because I had to go on social welfare, because I literally did not have a penny. And I said, I had to go down to him and say, I don't have the money to wait until this is all processed. I need money now. And I had to go down. It's the same fella that used to come in to me every day for lunch into my restaurants, and I had to go down and say, I just don't have it. I just don't have it. So I was at rock bottom. I'd gone through a divorce. I was on my own. Giving away my age. I was 36 at the time. I felt, here I am at 36 years of age after being in business for 17 years, opening my first restaurant when I was 19. And now all of a sudden I have nothing. I was at rock bottom. But mainly it wasn't even about the financial stuff, because it was more about everything that it exposed me to. And all the things that I hadn't dealt with came up. Yeah. So that's where I was at the time. Yeah.
And that's that's a tsunami of emotions. That's about pretty much, when your whole foundations are rocked to the core, the rug is pulled out from underneath you. You don't even have a sense of equilibrium of what it is to be even standing on your own feet. Or what your feet actually feel like. So what was it then, because you reach that part in time and it's like, well, I've choice here. Now I can opt out and opt out of life, or I can, take the next step. So what was it that, there was definitely something that was still within you that hadn't been extinguished, that light was still there. And I do believe, it's within each and every single one of us. And there are times, it's a bit like the fire when it's banked down. You need a bellows to come in, to bring the air into it, to let the flame come in. So what was it then that that you decided, okay, well, do you know what? I'm going to take it day by day and see how it goes. And was there a moment when you decided that?
Yeah, there was a moment, and without being too grotesque, it was literally a couple of nights after I closed, and I literally very, very, very delicately tested out taking my life. Okay. And I realised I was in the bath in my house alone. And I realised, because I was very good at faking it. I was very good at pretending I was okay. Even as a child, my nickname was always Smiley. Yeah. So I was an expert at it. I was an expert at wearing the mask and everyone thinking that everything was fine. And I remember realising that if I do this now, if I really do this properly, I'm not going to be found probably for days, because there's no one going to be looking for me. No one's going to be looking for me, because I would lie to everybody, and I would tell my mother I was with so-and-so. I would tell, my friends I was with so-and-so. Nobody was worried about me. You know what I mean? So nobody was going to be checking on me. So I realized that they're literally going to find me in the bath, swollen, you know, dead, etc., etc. And I think, obviously, I realized I didn't want to end my life at that point. I realized it was just, it was that was a real life or death decision. It was a real moment of, you know, they say a lot of people, you know, that do it like that, it's really a cry for help.
Yeah.
And not everybody, but, you know, I think I wanted to do a cry for help, but I knew that I wouldn't be found. So I didn't, thankfully. And I remember I went to bed that night and I was very shaken and I was very afraid. And I remember the next day, my mother had a load of books in my house that I'd kind of flicked through before, but I'd never read. I'd never read a self-development book. Never read a self-development book. I used to read, but a lot, but I'd never read a self-development book.
Yeah.
And I picked up, and I don't believe in coincidences, definitely. I picked up a book, and it saved my life. And it was the right book for that moment. And I picked up The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
And I read it, I think, in about 2 days from back to front, from front to back, and you know, right through. And I sat there in bed and I read it. And the one thing you asked, what was it that I had? I always had an ability to be very practical. I was always the one that got things done in my family. I was the one that looked after everybody. You know, even as a little girl, I was the one that was able to kind of figure out the simplest way, the quickest and easiest way to get things done. So I read the book, The Power of Now, and the way my mind works, maybe it was out of desperation. Maybe it's when you're at such a low point, you're looking so, you need so much to find the answer, that for me it was staring me in the face. I knew I couldn't go from feeling the way I felt, which was at that moment I was falling in fear. But I knew I couldn't go in that moment from there to feeling, yeah, everything is fine, I'm so happy. Yeah. But The Power of Now landed on my lap. And the message in it was so clear. It was, if I don't think about the past, if I don't think about the future, and I just sit right now and just keep focusing on this moment, I can actually breathe again. I can breathe again. And that was the starting point. And it gave me the ability to just be present. And you know that my brand is the Blackbelt Mastermind. And I could relate to it because in martial arts, and I've done a lot of martial arts, I'm black belt. I know that the basics is what matters. I know that establishing a base is the most fundamental and important thing to being able to do anything afterwards. And I instinctively knew I've got to establish a base. I've got to get back to sitting in the now. So that's how it began. That's how it started. That's how I re-began. It was like reprogramming to come back to base. And maybe I'd never been there, to be honest. Maybe I'd never actually gone there. I'd always been ahead of myself. I'd always been running away from sitting with me. So in hindsight, obviously, it was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. And I think it's very much reflective of the world we live in now about doing, as opposed to, you know, sometimes you need to take the time just to be. But it's not everybody that's very comfortable in their own skin to be. They need the time, you know, what does it mean to be me? You know, because that's probably the biggest thing for women, because we get lost in the roles that we play. You know, I remember the first course that I did was called Who Am I? And it was literally that, because, you know, losing your, you know, as a mother and as a wife and as a nurse and, you know, traveling the world and things like that. I loved it and I really embraced it. But my whole sense of self was like, who am I among this? So, you know, it's actually good because it's that catalyst to change, you know, that just activates something within you, that you start looking, you know, that you start exploring the world and see, well, what is it that I can find that is going to tell me or give me insight or understanding, or actually the biggest thing of all is actually the connection with ourselves, because we don't feel connected with ourselves, because we've never been taught to nourish ourselves as a soul, as a spirit, and as a person. So the Eckhart Tolle, you know, the power of now, you went on from there. So what happened then after that? You know,
So that led me,
obviously part of it, yeah.
yeah. So that led me to pick up more books.
Yeah.
And I, again, as I said, there's no coincidences. It was a sequence of books, and I really, really, although it might sound a bit, you know, woo-woo, I don't believe that there was that they landed on my lap in that order for a reason. Because the next book I picked up was Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and in that book I learned, and this is, as I said, this is probably what I've discovered is my biggest skill, is to simplify things and to synopsize them. And I took the learning from that was that, you know, we can choose how to react. We can choose, we actually have an ability how to react. So I went from being in the present moment to now going, okay, now I can choose what I do next. So that brought me on to the next book, which was Paul McKenna, a very well-known hypnotist.
Yeah.
And I started reading some of his books, and I loved them, how practical they were, how they would give you exercises in it. So the way my mind works is I read all his books, started studying him, and I discovered that he had been taught by a guy called Richard Bandler, who I then started reading his books, and I discovered that he was the co-creator of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP for short. So when I started reading his books and learning some of those techniques, they started helping. They, in little ways, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, suddenly my life was different in one day, but it brought me in a better direction. And, you know, we know that if all we've got to do is to turn 1 degree off course, and we're going to end up in a different direction. So suddenly I was able to, over maybe a couple of months of reading these books and doing these techniques, I got myself into a position I was able to get up. I went out and got a job for the first time in my life, working as a restaurant manager. And from there, everything started to fall into place. I was working really well. You know, I was getting a great wage. I was able to start paying to go on courses for myself and train myself. And I had no intention of this becoming my new business, but I loved the learning. I loved learning about psychology. I loved learning about the subconscious. So I went and did I studied everything. I started studying psychology, hypnosis, and of course NLP, linguistic programming. And then I went over and started studying with Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. And I remember after the first week, it was literally like suddenly a light bulb had switched on, and I could see the world in a whole new way. And that, of course, led me to writing my book, The Blackbelt Mastermind, which isn't about martial arts. It's about becoming the black belt of your own mind. And that led me to, it was organic. It was very natural. It led me to obviously helping people, helping first myself, helping then people around me, like people I loved and where I was very close to. And then it just became my business. I remember actually I read another book, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, great book. And in it he spoke about masterminds.
Yeah.
You know, and I set up a group in Dublin in through Meetup, for the intention of just being around like-minded people. But I ended up being the one that was running it, and started attracting people coming to listen to what I was talking about. And before I knew it, I was giving talks. And before I knew it, people were asking me to be coached, you know, and asking for my help, and et cetera, et cetera. So fast forward, we're here now. That was in 2009 when all this happened. Here we are 12 years later, and this is what I do.
The different world. And I think it's something that you touched on there, because you've got a practical brain, one that obviously because of the business and things that actually work with you. And I think one of the big things for me was is harmonizing the practical brain with the magic, you know. the spirit, the energy, and getting them into balance. Because when you have a practical brain, you go, because you see things practically, but when you switch sides, it's like you see the world in a totally different way. You see the magic of possibility, of synchronicity, of connections, of expansion, of growth, and all of this. And I think, because I also studied NLP, and with Miles O'Reilly and Dick McHugh, and it was very much it was actually my connection to spirituality in reality that I connected, funnily enough, when I was doing my NLP, that opened my world to, do you know what, no matter what happens in life, I'll be fine, because, me and my heart and soul and spirit reconnected again. So the part that I felt was missing all my life, in doing NLP, I reconnected with it again. And then I discovered, but sure, it was never missing to start with. It was just that I had never seen it or felt it or nourished it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I do think, it's funny because, yeah, maybe it sounds a bit like an oxymoron. Can you be practical and, creative and woo-woo simultaneously? I think you can, I certainly think, I think we all are, and the more I delved into the subconscious, hypnosis, and NLP, I got into it because of the practical aspect. Yeah. But the more I understand about it, the more I realize it is actually all energy. Yeah. It is all energy. Yeah. So we're kind of going into...
Yeah, we're taught to look at the world the wrong way around, really. We're taught to look at it, about studying and all about results, whereas in fact, there's a whole element that behind all that, and that's only a tiny part of it. There's a whole, self that you need to, that we're here to learn and to grow and to gather experiences along the way. Some of them are nicer than others, and some of them are not so nice.
Yeah, exactly. But it all teaches us, right?
Oh, totally, absolutely. And because from you as well, Danielle, if you don't mind, because you had, I think it helped you with your relationship with your father as well, because that would to take a parent out of your equation is a big thing, and it's something that that from a conversation that you had with him, and a frank exchange of views, shall we say, that you didn't talk for years, but with everything in the self-development that you did, you gained insight and understanding, and it brought you back to reconnecting again. So can you just go a little bit about that?
Well, I'm here in a little villa, and I'm spending a week with my dad and my sister here in Italy at the moment. And I'm lucky to be able to do this right now. And it's funny because 20 years ago or so, or 30 years ago, I would never have thought I'd be doing this, right? For a number of reasons. Primarily because I 20 years ago, I didn't want anything to do with my father. And the reason why I didn't want anything to do with my father was I was angry, I was hurt, because when we were very young, my parents broke up, and I moved to Ireland with my mum at the age of 9, and I didn't see my father for another 9 years, until I got on a plane at the age of 18 to ask him why he hadn't been in touch, why he hadn't sent a postcard, a Christmas card, a phone call, nothing, And it's funny because, 18 years later, at 36, I tried to take my life. And the reason why I was trying to take my life was because his words were in my head. His words were, Danielle, it's easier to think of you dead. And the reason why he was using those words, he'd said those words to me when I went over when I was 18. I got back on a plane and I didn't talk to him basically for another 20 years. But when I was 18, I was in a very different state of mind to understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
Then when I got back on a plane at 38 years of age, to ask him again, can you explain this to me again, Dad?
Yeah.
Right? And I heard it very differently. One, because I was a little bit older and wiser, hopefully, and two, because of my learnings and my discovery of how the mind works. I was able to sit in a different place and really listen.
Yeah.
And I heard what he had to say very differently. So I understood that, you know, there's always another perspective, that it wasn't as clear cut as that. It's not as literal as that. My mother had a part to play, the environment, the family, the times, the issues that he was going through. All of this had a huge part to play in the decisions, or some stuff maybe that was out of his control at the time. And it completely changed my perspective and how I understood what happened.
Yeah.
Right? So I was able to thankfully make peace with him.
Yeah.
And put my anger aside and deal with that, and realize that everything that I'd also gained, even though I'd missed years with him, I had gained huge knowledge, huge strength, huge empathy for anyone else who's going through this sort of thing. So thankfully now, you know, we're here together enjoying our time. In the past 10 years or so, we've been able to do that and create wonderful memories. So I'm very grateful for that.
I think it definitely, the age and maturity, and also because of the work that you had done on yourself, and a lot of forgiveness, you know, forgiving yourself, forgiving him, you know, and letting go of that things had to be a certain way. We have this idea that our parents need to behave in certain ways, you know, that they should be doing, you know, they should protect us, they should do this and should do that. But when you do self-work, when you do work on yourself, you realize that everybody's going through their own stuff, and everybody is dealing with it in the best way that they can possibly. And I think sometimes, you know, because I know even from my own relationships, you say when I separated with my husband, I know the part of him in his mentality was, you know, they're better off without me, you know, that they sort of make that decision that, you know, and maybe it's an excuse or whatever it is, but it can be from gaining emotional distance. And I think when you gain emotional distance, you're not obviously connected with so your dad wouldn't have been connecting with you, and you wouldn't have been connecting because he had his emotional distance with the stuff that he was dealing with, and you were basically, you know, coping with what it is that you were going through, and learning and growing and getting a sense of yourself and who you were, and also what it is that you were here to do, you know, because through your own experiences, there's nothing like personal experience when you're helping another, you know, when you're helping others and mentoring and coaching them through it, because you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and you're not talking from, and not all the answers come from a book. So the nuances and the insights and the understandings that you had gained from your particular set of circumstances gave you a unique insight and an ability to know what it is when you're pushed to the edge, you know, to know what it is when there's something within you that, you know, that when you become open to it, allows the magic to come back slowly into your life, and allow that to feed you, because it is you, you know, it's you connecting with you again, that, you know, you are the light.
Exactly. You're so right. I totally agree. Yeah.
So what, so you do, you're doing courses at Danielle. So, you know, how is it? How can people like get in contact with you, or how is it that how can they work with you, basically?
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, I coach and I mentor people and I train people. So I do courses, I do workshops, I do events, and I do obviously mentoring. So the main ways is through one-to-one coaching, group coaching, or of course just the NLP training if they just want to go straight into doing the NLP training. And people can find me. My brand is the Blackbelt Mastermind. there's the book as well, the Blackbelt Mastermind book, but, just look me up on Facebook or either Blackbelt Mastermind or Danielle Serpico. There's not too many Serpico around. So if you Google Danielle Serpico, you'll find lots of information about me. Probably too much. Hopefully nothing too bad. But it's like, so people can get in touch with me.
You have the training that you have that's coming up.
I have lots of trainings. I have a free workshop, a 5-day workshop coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks. So if people want to, they can follow the Blackbelt Mastermind page on Facebook or here on Instagram at Danielle Serpico. They'll find information about that as well. Or they can message me and I can give them a link to that. So that's normally a paid course, €297, but I'm doing it for free. And it's a 5-day course. It's going to be over on Facebook, but it is all recorded as well. So once they register, they'll be able to get the recordings of that as well. And that's all going to be based on one mindset and how to get you feeling better and thinking better and in a better direction. Also communication, how to use more effective communication. And also, for business, if you want to have a better life financially, or presumably both emotionally as well. That's a great way to start, is by doing this course that's coming up. I'm going to be doing NLP training. One of the reasons why I'm here as well. I'm looking at lovely villas for next year for doing another NLP practitioner in Italy. We did one there just before COVID, and it was absolutely incredible. So it's an amazing spot. I'll show you out the window here. The window has bars. It looks like I'm in prison, but this is my villa at the moment.
Oh, stunning.
So this is where I'm in here just for the reception for the internet. But this is where I am currently, and we're going to be looking at villas for here for next summer for the NLP practitioner here next summer. We did one 2 years ago and it was amazing. So if people want to come to Italy, beside Lake Trasimeno, in Umbria, near Tuscany in Italy, it's a trip of a lifetime, both for the experience, obviously, and obviously the learnings as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to embrace that is just, fabulous. The beautiful, the food, the culture, the energy, the water, the sea, all of that, all really, really, really transformational. And if you share, Danielle, the 5-day, because I would definitely recommend, I'll share it for mine, because one of the things that definitely transformed my own life was the fact of doing NLP and studying it, and that ability to work on yourself. It gives you such insight and understanding, and a real sense of the magic of who you are. But we are magic. It's just we don't see it an awful lot of the time, and it's it's time to let it out to sparkle and shine, as I say.
That's all right. Absolutely. Marie.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week in Italy and with your family, and we will definitely connect, because I think the timing is perfect, because your internet is beginning to stall at the moment. So thank you very much, Danielle. Talk to you soon, and share that course with me, and the very best of luck.
Thank you, Marie. Bye.
Okay, and
Bye.
thanks for everybody for the birthday wishes. Bye.
Bye.